My name's Newman Selvitelli, and I am class of 1991 and chair of the Mentoring and Networking Committee of the Women's Leadership Council here at Trinity College. We are so happy to see you young women here this evening and for joining us and learning. Sorry, my camera just flew. That's a new one. To learn about harnessing the power of the WLC. We are hoping and expecting to have a few more people join us, but we thought we'd go ahead as time is of the essence. We did have about 20 young alums sign up this evening, so we're hoping that more will jump on when time allows. But as we get started, I just want to give you all a little history. We're a small group, so we will make this very conversational. But I wanted to give you a little history about the WLC. It was founded in 2010 after a year of celebrating 40 years in coeducation. It was founded by a very smart and generous group of alumni from the Board of Trustees, and there was 27 founding members in 2010. We've grown our membership now to over 900 Trinity alumni, and if you're not already a member, we hope that you will become one and learn more about the Women's Leadership Council tonight. The mission really is to build and sustain a network for all women identifying Trinity College alumni and students. We like to create mentoring and networking opportunities for not only alumni, but also sometimes current students. So we have opportunities for you to volunteer and help us with that as well. And WLC really provides experiences and benefits that assist alumni at all different times in their lives. So tonight we're reaching out to you specifically, those of you who have graduated within the last 5 years, so that we can teach you more about the WLC and have an honest and open conversation about networking and mentoring, and perhaps have you all help us figure out some the future of some of our programming and our work together as well. So I'm going to turn things over to Allie, who is our moderator tonight, and let her get things started. Thanks, everybody.
Thanks, Anne, and thank you so much for all of the work that you do with the WLC. We really appreciate it, and the subcommittee. So I'm Allie Chalfin. I am a member of the class of 2017. Currently, I am in my 4th year of my doctoral program for clinical psychology at Furkhoff Graduate School of Psychology. And we thought that in our little introductions, we would include a fun fact type-esque thing, and have everyone, when they introduce themselves, say what their favorite Trinity performance or band or musical group was when they were at Trinity. So mine was the a cappella groups, all of them. And yeah, that was so you're going to go in alphabetical order. So Barbara, if you want to introduce yourself and what your favorite Trinity musical act or band was.
Oh, sure. Thank you, Allie. So hello, everyone. I'm Barbara Selmo. I'm from the class of 82. Just very quickly, I guess, I was an English major, very involved in the tripod, went on to teach, then went into academia to administration, and I've been there ever since. And I think the musical, of course, I love the pipes. When I was there, it was only the pipes. And I think the musical performance I remember the most was Flock of Seagulls. So Ellen remembers, I know you do.
I do.
And Claire.
Hi guys. Hi Diana. Hi Kenzie. Welcome. I'm Claire Capeci. I am class of 85. I was an economics major, and I was saying to the girls earlier, I'm more like the group I remember is U2, mostly because I can't freaking imagine that they actually played at Trinity. I almost have to go back to the pictures to believe that Bono actually came there. But I have been in advertising my entire career. I graduated and started in media and media planning, and then switched over to what is account management. I'm now president of Arnold New York, which is part of Havas, which is one of the networks, for lack of a better word. And So yeah, and this group is something that has been new for me after all the years of not joining it and not really realizing. Last year I had gotten, I was invited in and had a really good time, and in fact met Ellen and then ran into her at an event, and we realized that she and her family, which Diana, I think you may be connected to, live in the family home of one of my really great friends from college. And somehow they were in the same town, and then they were all friends together. And so we made that connection at an alumni event that happened in New York and before the holidays. So that's me.
Yeah.
Great to meet you guys.
Alice, if you want to go.
Hi, good evening, everyone. My name is Alice Vautour. I am the class of 2001. And I kind of had a couple of jobs before I went on to pursue my law degree. I have a mix of experience in both private practice as well as in the corporate world. A lot of my experience has been in the healthcare field, and by a very interesting pivot in my career journey, I am now in the manufacturing space and currently work for a global specialty fibers company. So all of that being said, one of my favorite bands that comes to mind from Trinity is Wyclef, because I was standing next to my roommate as she exchanged shirts with Wyclef. Don't ask me why. It was one of those Trinity events. But that probably is one of the standout memories for me.
Wow. Cool.
Awesome. And last but not least, Ellen.
I'm Ellen Smith, Ellen Carpenter Smith. I graduated in '82 with Barbara. And my major at Trinity was sort of an interdisciplinary major with fine arts and economics. And my first job was on Madison Avenue at Ogilvy and Mather, which is an amazing ad agency. And I moved through that to get my master's in advertising and ended up down on Wall Street working in marketing for the Bank of Tokyo, and then out in Connecticut for a firm that was doing those great little services that went along with your credit card. I had done some time at Citibank and then moved out to CUC International. But eventually, when we started to think about having a family, I decided to switch gears and do something very creative, which grew out of my passion for architecture. And I built up an interior design business. And that's been my primary focus since then. But I also do have some marketing consulting clients where I use my research background. I got my master's at the Medill School of Advertising out at Northwestern while my husband was getting his business degree. And so, like a number of you, my career went through various different stages. I envy Claire for having found the career and really been able to stay in it and keep on that very focused track. I love advertising. I always have. I have a set of framed pictures of advertising from the 20s, 30s, and 40s on my wall in the kitchen from Saturday Post magazine. Diana knows this, and I'm happy that she's sort of found her way into the world of design in creative and marketing, and I look forward to seeing how she navigates her world. But my absolute favorite memory of Trinity music was the Trinity pipes, for sure. And I think I had a crush on one of them, and all of that. My dad had been taking me to the Whiff and Poofs at Yale for a long time. But I'll just say it was a joy when finally Diana got to Trinity and was welcomed into the pipes and became one of the music directors there. So we got to see our daughter sing in the pipes all 4 years, which was a great experience.
Awesome. And sorry, Anne, I know you spoke earlier, but I want you to give your full introduction.
No problem, especially since I did some research on my favorite band. So I will totally confess that I never can remember the name of a song or who sings what or the lyrics. So I almost texted my Trinity friends to say who were the bands that played when we were there, because I thought we were supposed to come up with a spring weekend band. And I remember, so I actually looked at a bunch of Trinity tripods this afternoon, which got me down a whole rabbit hole of memories. But there was a Jonathan Edwards who
Oh,
performed. And I remember, yeah, that was, and
wow.
I had to pull that one out of the memory vault, but yeah, I think that was
Jonathan Edwards.
1989 spring. So I'm class of 1991. As I said, I graduated with a political science major in American government. I was very involved with residential life and admissions while I was at Trinity, and I did do the legislative internship when I was there. I thought I was off on a path towards law, and then my senior year, I kind of panicked and was like, I'm not sure that's at all what I want to do anymore. And I decided to start working in admissions at a boarding school, which combined the things that I love doing outside of the classroom at Trinity as well. And that was many moons ago. And I have now been working in independent school administration for 30 plus years and have worked at a variety of schools. Most currently, I'm at Suffield Academy, which is just north of Hartford in Suffield, Connecticut. I'm the director of college counseling and leadership programs here. And I'm just so happy to see everybody here tonight. Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you. So again, thanks everyone for being here. I think we're hoping or expecting a few more to join, but for the time being, I would just like to open it up to our participants to introduce themselves and also share your favorite band or musical experience. I guess spring weekend, I wasn't thinking of spring weekend when I was thinking of band, but and what you're hoping to learn from tonight, or what you're hoping to take away from this event. So Diana, do you want to start? No pressure.
Sure. Hi, everyone. My name is Diana. I am the class of 2019. I did a whole bunch of stuff when I was at Trinity. I was a tour guide. Like my mom said, I was in the Trinity Pipes. So I guess that sort of answers that question. I'm a little biased. I was also part of the Chapel Singers, creative director of the film festival for a little while, musical theater and the arts programs. I did the inner arts program, which was, I think, sort of a new like art focused freshman seminar. So there was a whole bunch of stuff that I was doing all over campus. And I did an interdisciplinary major where I combined studio art, philosophy, psychology, and media studies with a minor in literature and psychology. And now I'm working as a graphic designer here in Austin, Texas. And I'm looking forward to kind of getting the chance to chat with everybody. I actually already know Kenzie really well. We worked together a lot when we were both at Trinity. So it's nice to see some familiar faces. But yeah, no, I'm just looking forward to this. And it's really nice to meet you all. And I'm excited. So.
All right, I guess it's my turn. And thank you, Diana, for, kind of shuffling me in right there after you. It's great to see you, and Allie, you too. Yeah, my name is Kenzie. I'm class of 2018. I was an English and film studies major at Trinity with a media studies minor. And what was I involved in? Wow. As Diana probably knows quite a lot and very similar to her, tour guide, also was in the inter arts program, was involved in our entertainment planning committee called Barnyard. So planning the spring weekends that we all know and love, and also probably most notoriously known for co-founding a sorority on campus in my junior year with one of my good friends, and still one of my best friends to this day. And then favorite band, I guess, would be Kygo, although he's technically a DJ, but that was my first ever spring weekend when I was a freshman. So everything was kind of magical at that point in my life, including that performance. So definitely one of my favorite ones.
I think just in the interest of time, we'll hop into the topics for our panelists to answer, and then we'll have time for questions at the end. So we're just hoping we're going to cover a couple of different topics regarding networking and how to build and identify mentors in the workplace. And so wanted to open it up to our panelists to kind of talk about or give from their experience and perspectives how to identify and cultivate a relationship with a potential mentor in the workplace or in the office.
I'll jump in because I'm in the market right now. So in truth, that's I think my highlight statement would be that at any point, at any time, you can find or look for someone to be a mentor. So right now, over my very first mentor was my first boss. His name was Alan Germain. He asked me 3 questions in my interview. What was 3% of 300? Because you had to be do numbers in your head when you're a media person. That was 9. Something current about advertising. And then he said, what music do you like? And the right answer in that, we all found out after, was Elvis Costello. The wrong answer was anything that was top 40. And that's how it started. And I ended up working for that one human in 3 different agencies. He went somewhere else, and then I ended up going in 3 ways. And I ended up, the truth of my career path is that when I did it right, I went for people. And when I had things that weren't great, I might have gone for a certain account or a certain something. But when I'm with the right mix of people, it's always been good. And now I'm in a situation, or not a situation, but in my current role and career, whether it's called mentors or whether it's called your own personal advisors, or it's who are 4 people that I just respect in business and whatever, that you can then ask them to say, hey, do you mind? And there's one is a woman that I newly have gotten to know in the company. Someone is a client, someone or was a client in a couple of different places. But would you just be a person who I might ask you some questions, or you could bounce things off of to let me know your thoughts on it, because I respect your opinion and what you think. So, I think it takes all shapes and sizes. It doesn't have to be someone that's super in your circle. Most people are honored if anyone ever says, hey, could you be my mentor? Or would you mind if I bounce some things off you and that kind of stuff? So that's how I have gone about it. And it's worked pretty well. And I'm not a super, I'm not someone who's way into feeling like I like to bounce things off of people all the time. But it is a fun thing to even just be able to access information from people in your industry and your life that you respect.
I have to agree with Claire. I would say that staying in your lane, whether it's your particular industry, your particular job, allows you to, develop and grow relationships in one way. But when you step out of it, whether it's to join organizations like this one, whether it's to, spread your wings and join in with friends who are doing something else, whether it's philanthropic, whether it's cultural, whether it's sports related, regardless, you're just allowing yourself lots of opportunities to meet people. For me, I've always worked in academia. My work has been in creative writing and in education, but for years I worked in MBA admissions. So I spent enormous amounts of time hanging out with MBAs. And so that just gave me lots of other people who I know, right? So not being afraid to bring in and work with a whole variety of other people and expose yourself only gives you opportunity to build your own board of directors, which you really kind of need, people that you're willing to throw things out and ask for their actual opinion, but also people with lots of different perspectives and the potential for a mentor who maybe has a 30,000-foot view on things that could be really helpful for you.
I also would offer this. I do believe people are sort of put in your life, and sometimes someone comes into your life, whether it's in a career or socially, and you connect with them and they have something that they just happen to share that clicks, that causes you to think a little bit differently about your plan, and they become a mentor-like person in your life. And that's okay too. Sometimes it can be very formal and sometimes it can be very organic. And just being aware when I look back on my life early on, and now find out who was in different places that I could have tapped if I had been thinking more holistically. You know, I just met a woman who was head of marketing for the Travelers when I graduated from Trinity. And she's the loveliest woman in the world. And I probably could have written her a note and she would have welcomed me in, and we might have sat down and had a really good conversation, and it might have helped me to, you know, move a little more strategically along the way. And other people that were in advertising in New York at the time that I graduated that I just didn't know about because I didn't lift my head up and look. And so I just want to mention that as something to give you all a comfort level with. It doesn't have to be so forced. You know, we all want to help each other, and just asking is going to lead to something meaningful. I'm sure we're all in the group because we want to help.
Yeah. And I think that reminds me of just sort of like one of the things that we all benefit from, which is like the internet and being able to shoot somebody an email or, you know, reach out to somebody who might be across the country who, you know, just to, you know, make that connection, make that, you know, bridge that gap. And I think a mentor doesn't need to be somebody who's in your office per se, or could be somebody just in your industry or that you've identified through like the WLC, for example.
I would like to just jump on what Ellen said a little bit. I do think when I sort of think about different times in my life, I do think there's times where mentors have just sort of organically appeared, that they've just, you know, walked, you know, somebody you met. And I think of the person who was most influential on me in my early career was the dean of students at the first school I was working at. And by working with her on some difficult student cases and things like that, and I learned more about her background and how she got to that role. And then that's who I wanted to become. And I think it was very easy, and I just sort of eased into that mentor relationship with her. But then I think you're never too old to need a mentor, or like Claire said, people to bounce things off of. And sometimes you have to be more intentional about going after it. I'm in a situation where I've worked at the same place for almost 20 years now. But through that, my whole life has changed in many different ways too, evolved. And I had to finally go to my supervisor, my boss, and say, I am at a crossroads in my career, and I need your mentorship on this. He's a year younger than me. It doesn't mean that he can't provide me, and he's a he, but still, you know, somebody I need to help me sort of look at different pathways. But then we'll evolve this conversation to the WLC, because that's where some real exciting energy comes in too. And I'll talk more about that when we get to there. But I think sometimes it's organic and sometimes you have to really look for it.
Yeah, I'll just piggyback on that in terms of the diversity of backgrounds and kind of the sources of where the mentorship can come from. And I also think that, you know, there's not one mentor for all things. A lot of times different people will add and provide different elements, like that spark of brilliance, like Ellen mentioned, and all of a sudden it causes you to see things in a different way or give you a very different perspective that leads you down an entirely different path. So I think at the end of the day, it's really the openness. And I can just kind of share one just personal story. I had a woman who I knew from the local area from kind of an interest group, a professional interest group, and I had listened to her podcast, and I kind of stalked her on Facebook, not in a weird way, but just followed her posts and reached out to her very randomly. And I was just so intimidated to reach out to her because I was like, oh my gosh, you know, she was in my age range, but I was just like, you've got it so put together. What do I have to offer you? And she reached out to me and asked me to join a group of 4 women who are all of a similar kind of interest in this one professional area. And it has turned into, we've been doing it for over a year. We meet on a monthly basis, and it has turned into one of the most valuable groups and voices in my life that I really treasure. And had it not been for her courage reaching out, I would have totally lost out on that experience. So, you know, never and I have to say this out loud to remind myself too at times, but never be too afraid just to reach out, because the worst thing that someone can say is, no, I don't have time for this right now, or I'm not interested. Then you move on, and that's totally fine. But on the flip side, you could also benefit from a really meaningful relationship and guidance in your life.
Yeah, and you never know how busy somebody is at any given moment. You know, sometimes being busy is just part of life, and don't hesitate to, you know, feel like you can reach back out. I think that's sort of key. I've had people reach out to me and I missed an email and I feel terrible. And, you know, when they finally connect, they're so understanding, and I so appreciate that, because we're all so busy. But connection is what brings meaning to life. And I think that's what drew me to the Women's Leadership Council, because it was all about connecting with women from different generations, with different backgrounds, with different life experience. And we just want to help you youngins see that vision and how it can help you.
Thank you all so much for those really thoughtful responses and thoughtful answers. Next, I think we wanted to focus or shift the conversation a little bit to how has our shift in the ways that we work, and Claire, you were talking about this earlier before people joined in, you know, how is the way that our shift, you know, shifts in the ways that we work impacted your career field, specifically with respect to remote work versus in-person work, and how has that, or how have you seen that impacting sort of the nature of mentorship and things like that in the workplace?
I actually have a question rather than for you guys. Have you started, did you work in the office before COVID, or did you mostly start working during COVID?
I worked in the office before COVID.
You were in the office during COVID? How about you, Kenzie and Diana? Did you work?
Yeah, I was in the office during or before COVID, and
Oh, you're pre-COVID, right? So, you know, what we were talking about is that has had a big dynamic on relationships. You know, one of our observations in my office is you had relationships before, and during COVID, they would strengthen, you know, you were able to work through it. But we hired a tremendous number of people during COVID, and they never had personal relationships. So there's a part of transactionality that affects things, the way people building trust. When things are working well, great. When they're not working well, how that dynamic happens. And now in my company, we're in hybrid land and kind of shifting it, requiring it a little bit more, at least 2 to 3 days a week, which is even new. And it's playing out for us in different ways, right? But that was something that persevering, and what we talk about a lot in our office is that really having to work harder to build relationships and have, you know, go a little extra mile is super important, because it impacts the work. It impacts how you learn and how people interact together. And so that was a topic we talked about amongst ourselves, and also be interested in hearing not just my colleagues' opinions, but also yours as well, just because I think it's a learning thing for all of us here.
It's so interesting because I think so much of it depends on your field of work as well. You know, being in education in a school where actually being in the buildings makes a big difference. There was, you know, a lot of question mark. There really wasn't a question about it. As soon as we could all be back, we had to be back. But yet, I think that we learned a lot about networking and professional development that we could reach outside of our schools without travel more easily through Zooms and online meetings and conferences that became. But it also stretched out the workday in a lot of different ways too, because now we did a lot of virtual programming for parents, and now they love that, and so we're still doing that, but we're still running a regular school during the day. So the day is going, you know, much longer than it used to. And then I compare myself to my husband who works in the engineering field, and he's in the hybrid situation like Claire spoke about. And he's like, it really doesn't matter if I'm in the office or not, but it's a little bit of the in between the meetings kind of chatter that is helpful. But even when he's in the office, they're still meeting on Teams or Zoom all the time. So I'm not sure how much, but I'm very interested in hearing from others too, how this is affected. That's my take from the school perspective.
Well, I think the pandemic definitely stretched managers to, at least where I work, and people who I know who work in academia, stretch managers with their staff to think about, interestingly enough, how to begin relationships, particularly when you're hiring new people. I hired 3 new staff during the pandemic. And so a whole new model of, if they're new, how do we connect them and bring them into the microcosm of my unit, as well as getting them connected to the rest of the university. And it's not that we didn't think about it intentionally beforehand, but I think when you don't have, what Anne was saying, you don't have the benefit of being in an office, being in a hallway, someone saying, hey, we're all going down the street to lunch, come with us. You have to intentionally say, okay, so maybe we have to make work groups. Maybe we have to, think about small mentoring. On this particular week, you're going to shadow X person. And that's just been interesting. So it's kind of expanded and pushed us to think differently, and me as a manager, to think about the staff differently, and to try to get the perspective of someone coming in brand new and doesn't have anything but these squares all day, which is really exhausting, an exhausting way to learn, when you also think about learning styles and how people approach, new situations.
Yeah, I'd love to hear from Diana, and forgive me, this lovely woman with long blonde hair. I can forgive me for just describing you. I just couldn't see your name. And I know Madison is on a bus, she tells us, and trying to tune in, but you haven't had the benefit of a nice chunk of time where you're really getting to experience the office setting. And we all know what you're missing, but I wonder if you all feel like there's something you would benefit from more interaction. Like, I don't know how to phrase the question, but can you talk to us a little bit about what it feels like to you and how you might see more time in the office as helpful?
Yeah, or do you even think you are missing anything? They might not.
I'm trying to be assumptive.
Yeah. I think I forgot to mention this earlier, but I work in marketing for a software company. So also a marketer in the room. I have had 2 different jobs during the span of the pandemic. So I've switched jobs during the pandemic. I have like the biggest love-hate relationship with remote work. There are days when I love being able to wake up right before work and just kind of roll into it. And like, I get a full 8 hours of sleep, or I can like go get my groceries in the middle of the day, or I can go for a workout class in the middle of the day, or whatever it is. And also being someone who works in tech, it's obviously very laissez-faire, like anyway. So you can just imagine how wild it gets in the remote tech space. But then at the same breath, the lack of human connectivity is so much there, and it's just so prevalent. And onboarding a new job remotely via Zoom is not only terrifying, but also really sad. And just, you don't feel connected to the company. And like my current company, we have a tremendous office in the middle of meatpacking in New York. It's probably the nicest, I joke around, it's the nicest building in Manhattan, but like, it's gorgeous. And we don't really have a hybrid work model. Like, no one's requiring us to go, but like when I go in and see my coworkers just for fun, like I have better days, and I come home feeling like, wow, I really like this place, versus like slamming my laptop shut at like 8 p.m. because I've been working all day, because I've forgotten what time it is, and I'm in my tiny New York studio apartment, like, so I think it's kind of a love-hate relationship. But I also my biggest fear, and I'm not sure if others agree, is my career progression in this environment feels like it's being stunted because I don't get to meet people who are more senior than me unless I reach out to them via Slack, which is awkward and like kind of hard to do at times. So it kind of requires you to like put yourself out there in a way that can be uncomfortable. And then if they don't respond immediately, you're kind of just like, oh, like, did I say the wrong thing? Or, oh, I don't want to interrupt their day. And, you know, if you're someone who's uber polite like me, you're like, oh, I don't know, you know, like if I should be doing that. But yeah, I think it's really hard because you don't get that executive FaceTime. You don't get to just bump into an exec in the office. Like you kind of have to be proactive about that and for lack of a better word, kind of back channel your way to like meeting the people you need to meet in an organization. And then also I worry, and I'm sure my colleagues at my company at least do too, that if we don't show up enough in person, we won't get promoted because it will seem like we're not part of the culture or on board with the mission, et cetera. So I think those are kind of some of the points I at least struggle with, but yeah.
That's great. Interesting.
So
Did you have a
helpful.
question for you, if you don't mind me asking? And if you do, just say, I don't want to answer. The fact that when, you know, that you moved jobs during the pandemic, was that by like, you know, better opportunity? Did you care? Like, were you grounded enough in the companies that it was like, oh, I'm just having another job and I'm going? Or did you were you connected enough where you were like, oh, bummer, or yeah, but there's just this other great opportunity? Like, was because and the reason why I'm asking is that I felt that where because of what you were just talking about, where there is a lack of connectivity, there are parts that you love, but in reality, you're in it's the box you're in. If you didn't get the opportunity, if things are happening, it's not feeling fun, you're not connected. It really made it easy when someone called you and said, hey, there's another opportunity right over here and you could do this. Like, if you don't mind sharing a little bit, I'm super curious.
Yeah. So my use or situation was more like I had been working in startups and got recruited by a big tech company. So this was kind of a big career transition for me. And also it was a big resume boosting opportunity for sure. And ironically enough, I was really looking for the stability and the security of a corporate company. And ironically, not the best time to be in tech for security and stability. So maybe not a good judgment call on my end. At least I couldn't predict where we would be at right now. But my last company prior to this, we were fully remote, but like I was very big about like trying to create in-person time. We were all located in the New York area for the most part. So we actually ended up getting a WeWork office space and then doing a mandatory Monday, like, or not mandatory, but like quote unquote mandatory Monday in person and that WeWork. And we would do social activities every Monday. So we would go to the WeWork and we would go get lunch somewhere that we all wanted to go to. And we'd actually sit at a restaurant for an hour and eat lunch, which is, call me old fashioned, but like, I don't know, I haven't done that in a minute, but that was like really great. And then amazing things after work too, like Soul Cycle, like we would do like an activity afterwards too. So it was kind of like a full day of like bonding, and it was really nice because the rest of the time we were remote, but we had that one day where we all saw each other. We'd have all of our team meetings. Everything was kind of stacked in that one day, so it was kind of nice. So it was more about the career transition and like opportunities of that for me than anything else.
Creative, I like that.
That's great.
One of the firms that I ended up working with, it was during the pandemic, and they really put a lot of effort into trying to create those virtual experiences because we were entirely remote, and that was just the structure of the firm. So we would have everyone like a couple days before the event would get like a little terrarium building kits, and then they would have a terrarium person that would tell you how to build your terrarium, and it was like an online kind of team bonding event. And those are good, and they do go a long way, at least to creating touch points. But ultimately, it's you know, when you go back to your office at the end of the day and all of the rest of the hours, if you're not having that in-person interaction, Kenzie, to your point, it's like, you know, you can't really substitute it. And if you're not having that FaceTime, if you're not even just like from the personal and human kind of interaction, it does become a lot easier to just to be able to, you know, make a transition if you're presented with something different. It does sound like your experience you probably would have done regardless, because it provided different elements of the role that you found attractive. But anytime, you know, you can kind of, it becomes a more of a transactional exchange, then and you don't have that, because I've definitely stayed at roles longer than I probably should have in hindsight because of the interpersonal relationships that I had within an organization that kept me there, because they were just like family and all of that. So you can see how it works both ways.
I mean, like, this isn't my experience, but it's my mom's experience, and she's in PR for healthcare companies, and she definitely has stayed in positions that she otherwise might have left because of all the like friendships and connections that she made. And I think, but from those connections, she's been able to sort of translate those into like her current role. Her previous like at least 2 or 3 roles have been from those early relationships with, you know, people who were her peers, not even just people who were her superiors.
I actually started at Ogilvy and Mather and was working in sort of an unusual capacity that related to like client billing. So it was not as close to advertising as I would have liked. And then I got an opportunity to work at a small little firm out in Connecticut. And I was like, oh, but I'll be getting to do what I really want to do. And I was young, and I would have been so much better off to stay in that big company, which is a great organization, and just be patient and sort of work through what was coming. And I know that's not sort of the way of the world these days, but I just tell you that story as somebody who wishes I could have been a little bit more patient. I know Diana has been at her firm for a couple of years, and patience has paid off for you, hasn't it?
Yeah, I mean, I was just gonna say, I was gonna echo kind of what Kenzie said. I've really enjoyed the sort of working remotely. I spent about a year before COVID doing the regular going into the office, and then transitioned jobs in the middle of COVID as well, and started a new job right in the middle of being 100% remote, and then sort of doing a hybrid once a week situation, but you don't go in with the rest of your team. So it was just me going in on Wednesdays, for example, but I was the only one in the office. And then on Mondays, someone else would go in, and on Tuesdays, someone else would go in, which was a very interesting sort of hybrid model. I think it was just the same as working completely remotely. And lately, I think really towards the end of 2022, we started spending a little bit more time as a full team coming into the office at least once or twice a week. But it's been a really interesting transition. I think, Clara, your question was interesting with how people are transitioning through COVID times and whether they feel like they want to stay or they want to go, or whether that transition feels easy. When I started, I actually work for Goodwill Central Texas right now as their graphic designer, but have just been promoted to creative manager since I've been, thank you, since I've been the only one who stayed that was on the team from 2021. When I started 6 months into it, the entire team left. Everybody else transitioned to something different, either retired because they felt like it was time, or they found a better opportunity. And it did seem like that was a very easy decision for everybody to do on that team at the time. And then even at the end of 2022, we have almost recreated our entire team again for a second time in 2 years. And sort of the tenure, I think, that I have on the team in such a tumultuous time for the company was definitely a big part of, I think, what put me in front of the executive board and the executive team to say, yes, let's bring you up to creative manager. And Kenzie, like you said, the FaceTime, the last couple of months being able to go into the office and actually, even though I had been here for 2 years, put myself in front of higher up people, getting a face to a name and being able to sit down and actually talk with them and have lunch with them and kind of show them what we are doing as a marketing team and who you're actually working with on the marketing team. So I do think that's very valuable. But it does feel nice, like Kenzie said, to be just at my home desk with my cat who has joined us now in I don't know if anyone noticed, but she likes sitting on my lap when I'm sitting at my desk. So she's joined our call. But it is nice to kind of be able to work from home, and I do everything completely on the computer as designer. So when I'm in the office, I think someone said it was those in-between conversations when you're in between meetings and in between having to sit at your computer and just work and focus. That's what I think is more valuable, and finding creative ways to still do that with people when we didn't have a hybrid model or when we were completely remote from work allowed us to be closer as a team, but it definitely wasn't easy and kind of an interesting last couple of years for sure.
Definitely.
I have a question. I know that we're kind of closing in on time, but it's been so interesting to hear Diana and Kenzie and Madison. I know that you joined us valiantly, and we appreciate that. It's so interesting to hear your experiences and your answers to our questions. And so I think we're all probably interested in knowing how WLC can be a useful place for you. And for your friends who maybe aren't on this call, whether you want to do a lightning round right now at the top of your head, or whether you want to, send us this kind of information, I think that would be great.
Thank you, Barbara. Read my mind there. And, we would also love to share with you some of the things. I mean, this kind of event is really what is the heart and soul of the WLC. Sometimes the events are grander and bigger, but often the most effective ones are the smaller, cozier ones where we can talk in person or talk at least virtually and connect in many different ways. I do want to mention that we have like the Bantam Career Network. I don't know if that's something that's interesting. I don't know if you guys even know what that is, but it's like the LinkedIn version for Trinity. You're shaking your heads. Yes, you have heard of it.
I think Kenzie and I were part of kind of the first guinea pigs for that program. We worked very closely with Joe Petrino on that. So.
Okay, great. Terrific. Do you use it? Have you used it since? No judgment, yes or no?
Yeah, one of my best friends actually got a job through it. Her first job out of Trinity, she was like, I should be like a testimonial for Trinity's career development. And she was like, should I call them and tell them that? I'm like, yeah, you probably should.
You should, absolutely. That's great. That's terrific. Good. Excellent. So if you have other ideas, Jess has put her email at Trinity in the alumni office where you could send ideas, because this is our committee for networking and mentoring committee for the WLC, and we're definitely looking for new ideas. I will plug that we are going to have a bigger networking event at the end of February 28th, same time, same format in the evening. So please think about that. That will be open to all Trinity alumni, and we've done it before and had a lot of fun. We have broken up by geographical areas, by different career fields, by graduating years, and just done kind of different breakout rooms and things like that. And so it's just another way to connect and meet some other Trinity women, which can be very empowering. Absolutely. But if there's other ideas or other comments other people have, I'll put my email in too. I see others are doing that, which is great.
And I guess in like the last minute or so that we have, or if any of you have any questions that from this chat, Kenzie or Diana or Madison, that you wanted to ask any of the panelists, or if you think of some later, they're all putting their emails.
Excuse me, Allie, I just want to invite Madison. She worked so valiantly to get here. And are you comfortable sharing your story of your connection to Trinity and what you're doing now, just so that we can all benefit and hear who you are?
Yeah, I thank you guys for letting me kind of passively listen for most of this. I'm glad I was able to join tonight. I graduated Trinity in 2019. I played field hockey and have a degree in sociology. I ended up working in finance. So I feel like I've been out of the loop on Trinity events, and I'd love to kind of engage with this group more because I definitely work in a male dominated field, and it's nice to sometimes engage with some women. I took a job at an investment firm doing marketing, and that really wasn't for me. And so now I am working in private wealth management in a more client-facing role. So I think that plays to I'm a very outgoing person, and that plays to my strengths more. Along the lines of COVID, one of the reasons I left my job is they weren't going back in the office. And I feel like I work in an industry where it's hard enough to work your way up the ladder that doing it via video camera wasn't ever going to work for me. And especially in the earlier years of your career, your development's so important. So I pivoted to a fully in-person role in a different sector of the finance field. And I'm very happy. Just left a team meeting of a very productive role definition growth sort of day. So I'm very happy about that. And I'm glad to be meeting all you women tonight.
Thanks, Madison.
So I'm going to just ask the group, what if you have one question right now about your next step in your career, or what's on your mind in your current position, what would be the top of mind question you guys have as young alumni?
I don't think I'll totally answer your question, but I think one thing that I definitely try and navigate on a daily basis that I'm not sure if you guys have some advice you could give, but just navigating kind of like sexism in the workplace and how I feel like being outspoken doesn't always work in your favor, but making things work for you would be a good question I have for you guys, if you're willing to speak to that.
I think that is so my background is in law, and I actually worked for a firm whose one of the principals was a woman. So that in and of itself was very different. But the entire environment that I was working within and the industry I was working within was very male dominated. And so your ability to navigate is really specific to your environment. You know, do you get along? Do you go along to get along? When do you speak up? When has someone completely so crossed the line where you need to? And I have friends from other sectors as well, and the comments and the things that you hear are repulsive, and perhaps that might be kind of have a different level of sensitivity in this day and age. But I also think that there is a reality that we're not going to be upending any industry anytime soon, and may not be within your career span. And so those are very difficult questions about what do you do, and where do you find yourself in a comfortable enough position to be able to be happy at what you do, and have your rights and have your self-respect acknowledged, and your rights maintained, and put up with a degree of reality that's out there. And I don't know that sounds like a very feminist answer, but it's certainly something I struggled with all along. And there's no great answer. And I found many times where I bit my tongue, maybe where after the fact, I'm like, oh my God, I should have bitched him out or her. Because some of those comments and some of that treatment came from a female superior. And it's like, are you kidding? Like, just because I had a baby doesn't mean my work product is any less, those kinds of things. And that's just the reality. And there's no easy answers. And it really depends on kind of what you can navigate within your own environment.
What's it like for you, Claire, in your role?
And it's an interesting question. I think we grew up, most of us on this, and me in particular, Ellen, Barbara, at the beginning, there was a lot less latitude. So like advertising and it was male dominated, far more balanced today. Like the world, #MeToo had a massive effect on what's okay, right? Like, and what you can get. Before that, there were instances where it was weird. I worked on automotive accounts, I worked on alcohol accounts. Car guys are much more polite than alcohol guys. So like certain businesses you navigated, and there's choices you have to make. I think the culture of people is important, because even when it's more male dominated, decent people are decent people and assholes are assholes. And when you're working in a place, you have to make a choice. Sometimes you might be making more money in one place or whatever, but if you're working with a bunch of not great people, the long game is probably not going to be the best game, whereas that's been my philosophy. If I'm comfortable, if I do not feel awkward, there's stuff that to Alice's point, that you may turn a blind eye. The second it's a line that's crossed, then, it's a point of uncomfortable, then you have to decide, is this the right place for you? I think that right now in the workplace, we're dealing with a lot, right? Like, so in the, and even in my friends of mine and colleagues in finance, the pressure of how people are treated, we'll have very, very big issues because people are not being identified or misidentification. The levels of the kinds of things that need to be okay for everybody in the workplace has gotten far more elevated. But with that said, when you're working with somebody or some group of people that, particularly I'll use finance, and they're big revenue generators and they've got power, you may be working with people that sometimes you have to decide to make a different choice. That's, but like I said at the beginning, which you may have missed, is that like, I'm a big believer that when I'm working with the right people, my long game works for me. If they're not great people, at some point it's not going to work. But the one thing I do want to point out for you three, there's just another observation that's a little, I guess, connected, but not so much. I have to give all three of you guys credit, because all three of you talked about navigating this world of hybridness and the job. And yeah, we all love to roll out and, go to SoulCycle in the morning, be able to take a shower, not worry about it, and then get in front of the screen in time for whatever the meeting is. But all three of you identified the fact that the relationships of the people that you are interacting with matter to your career. And all of you have made changes, whether you realize it or not, that have elevated you based on that in a really short window of time, which I have to give you a lot of credit, because I have people who have been working in my industry for years and years and years, and they would rather just roll over and walk the dog than come in here, even if they're at a senior level. So, I think you all have it really very right in your reading of the importance of how getting that face time, even if it's not every time, makes a difference. And to the point with you, Madison, where you just know for you like being there, it works better for you. And I think that self-awareness of not only yourselves, but the industries and the companies you're working in is really impressive, quite frankly.
It seems like we're in this amazing transition that's going to settle in a really cool way, but it's a really hard time right now. I'm sure Claire, running this business and having to keep hundreds of people on track and focused when some of them want to be here, there, and everywhere is tough. But what a great thing. I so wish there had been a group like this when I was your age. And I'm just so glad that you guys have chosen to step into this conversation and really let yourself learn and let yourself share with us, because we're learning things from you too.
Thank you all for everything that you guys have shared and been very vulnerable, both participants and panelists. We really appreciate it. Just in the interest of time, I'm going to turn it over to Anne to give our closing remarks. But like she mentioned, there's a bigger, more involved, I guess, networking opportunity coming up at the end of February that will be open to all Trinity alum. So we encourage everyone to participate, but
And bring your friends.
Yeah, please, definitely. Thank you,
Bring
Allie.
your friends. And a
Please
couple
bring your
glasses of wine
friends.
and a glass of wine like Ellen did, and I forgot.
No, I'm
Feel free. Shall we
definitely
have
gonna do
Diana come up with a cocktail for us?
that.
Cocktail.
You all have been wonderful. Thank you so much for being here tonight. I hope to see the three of you again on February 28th at 7 p.m. Our invitations for that will be going out shortly, hopefully. Continue to think, to share, to care, and here's to strong Trinity women. Very impressed with all of you being here tonight. Thank you so much.
Yeah.
Yes, raise a glass to that. Thank you all so much.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Guys, it's nice meeting you.
Have a good evening.
All right, thanks everyone.
Take care.
Thanks. Bye-bye.
Reach out.